today, mourning the great David Bowie. My talk is called Main Man, Performing the Queer Legacy. Are you my main man? Are you now? Are you now? Are you a God man? Are you now? Are you now? Gentle queries from glitter rock pioneer Mark Bolan on the track Main Man, culled from the 1972 breakthrough T-Rex LP Slider, which came out almost 1 month to the day after David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Main Man was a curious queer calling. Are you now? Are you now? Queer Things records. In my peak era of vinyl, 1967 to 1982, it was a beautiful pastime to gaze at the LP jacket while listening, to touch and imagine. 12-inch jackets, gatefold sleeves, and inserts were in many instances as crucial as the sounds embedded in the vinyl grooves. A material decussation of sound and vision. Listening, as a correlate of sound, was deepened by this visual material exchange. Moreover, the concepts such as effective in characterizing sonic landscapes of side A versus side B, a concept that's virtually lost on present-day digital audiophiles, created intentional listening practice devoted to mood and consciousness. For example, I would often select side D of the Beatles' White Album for an optimum trip out. Are you now? Have you ever been? In 1983, a conversation with new music composer Pierre Boulez, Michel Foucault suggests the public listens to what is made available, and what the audience happens to listen to, since it is what is being offered, reinforces certain tastes, defines the limits of a well-defined capacity for listening, and determines more and more a listening pattern, making it more difficult to perceive anything new. Of course, this is not a univocal process, and it's also clear that the growing familiarity with music increases the capacity for listening and gives access to possible differentiations. But this phenomena mostly occurs in the margins. The albums of David Bowie, specifically in the 1970s, performed a disidentification on a tumescent music industry, and in this way, epitomizes Foucault's marginal phenomenon. Queer Jose Munoz would say, disidentification is a strategy that works on and against dominant ideology, and the negotiations between desire, identification, and ideology are a part of the important work of disidentification. Ziggy's imaginary disidentification doesn't reject the industry, it seduces the industry. First appearances in Rolling Stone, Cream, and Circus magazines, and Ziggy is already problematizing the industry with gender explosives, developing the industry with a regal command. She is a queen, and such are queens that your laughter is sucked in their brains. Ziggy sucked long before disco. The first side of Ziggy Stardust was daily play on my 16-inch turntable at home. The album's opener, 5 Years, cracked a panicked portal to apocalyptic cutoffs. I remember a best friend weeping when I played the song for him, a plausibly poetic prophecy of apocalypse and Anthropocene. A cop knelt and kissed the feet of a priest, and a queer threw up at the sight of that. This was my first cultural encounter with the word queer. Before that moment, it was just a pejorative that preceded a fist. Lost on the easternmost margins of Scarborough, Ziggy appeared to me like a beacon of hope. No, a beacon of perversely exquisite desire. Could this be me? In 1972, gay visibility was clocking at zero, on TV, on the radio, on the streets of Highland Creek. A year later, in '73, I bought Bowie's next release, Aladdin Sane. A shopping spree at Sam the Record Man and A&A's on Yonge Street. I met my parents in the cafeteria of the now defunct Woolworths, just north of Carlton. Vintage 40s real estate deterritorialized by Shoppers Drug Mart in the present day. Gushing with delight, I opened the gatefold sleeve to reveal Bowie's majestic and alien posture, naked, pure androgyny painted silver. This is a first edition UK pressing of Aladdin Sane. I keep my copy of the now Pride cover story from 2003 with Will Monroe tucked inside this copy. But back to our luncheonette booth at Woolworths. My mother burst into tears straight away. Her first fears about me were gatefolding before her eyes. Are you now? Are you now? Those fears amassed in 1974 when Bowie brought his Diamond Dogs tour to Toronto's O'Keefe Centre, now the Sony Centre. I spent hours getting ready and finally emerged from my bedroom, high-waisted, flared ecru trousers, turquoise Lurex socks, squished into pink platform sandals. My neck swathed, a billowy vintage palm tree shirt from Amelia Earhart on Yorkville, too much rhinestone jewelry, my neck swathed in a 5-foot-long baby blue chiffon scarf that actually originally belonged to my mother in the 1950s. The scarf was a mechanism to hide a hickey on my neck from a secret boyfriend. I was taking my girlfriend to the show. Such was 1972. She preferred Cat Stevens and Carole King. Confronting my parents in the kitchen in full regalia, my mother on cue again burst into tears, while my father proclaimed, "Great, now I have a daughter for a son." I was getting used to my mother's chagrin, but my father's comment shocked me. He was an artist and graphic illustrator, a career that intersected gay and lesbian trajectories. They immediately suggested that I help move the appliances in the laundry room. Not a chance, not in this outfit, gotta go. A mad dash to my mother's Chevy Vega, and I sped off downtown, but not before stopping about 100 meters north of our house to remove the sensible shoes that I was forced to drive in and to lace up my highest platforms. My girlfriend's mother literally dropped the rake in the front yard when I arrived and sashayed up the driveway. Once at the O'Keefe Centre, we waited in line with the other glam freaks and fashionistas. A photographer stopped to take my picture. My girlfriend stepped out of frame. I basked in the lens. Are you now? Are you now? Inside the venue, I was shocked when Bowie stepped on stage in a suit. What the fuck? Where was the glam in that? His chameleon cat tongue caught my tongue. Bowie pulled the trigger of sexual promiscuity that armed the 1970s. Sexual liberation, spearheaded by a movement of radical gay sexuality, was transforming straight society. In his book, Beyond Shame, Patrick Moore suggests, in the 1970s, gay men initiated an astonishing experiment in radically restructuring existing relationships, concepts of beauty, and the use of sex as a revolutionary tool. It is crucial to see the sexual experimentation of gay men in the 1970s without the filter of AIDS, as a series of individual actions and cultural creations that were liberating to some participants and destructive to others, influential to liberal popular culture and deeply threatening to conservatives. Though Bowie appears to have been toying with the notion of gayness instead of being it, his representational experiments with queer bodies presented a portal of possibilities to rock audiences. I was constantly puzzled in the most pleasing ways by straight identified rockers who lavished attention on the Rolling Stones and their prancing, mincing lead singer. Fake black, fake queer, and pure theater, Jagger toyed with gendered and racialized identities while keeping his adoring male throng entranced. They were dedicated. How was this possible, to be that fey and demand straight respect? Bowie, however, crossed different wires, sparking more volatile territorial fires. Are you my main man? Are you now? Are you now? Main Man was the name of the management company that fronted Bowie. I snapped up records that bore the logo, like this Dana Gillespie record, Ain't Gonna Play No Second Fiddle, and Mick Ronson's Slaughter on 10th Avenue. In Watch That Man, the first track on Aladdin Sane, Bowie sings about homosexual Hollywood parties and piss elegance. An old-fashioned band of married men looked up to me for encouragement. It was so-so. My 17-year-old self could not have been more titillated. But for all the talk of promiscuity and sexual abandon in the Bowie camp, tales of Angela Bowie and Mick Jagger and a host of nubile others culled from a flourishing culture of groupies, Bowie may have played a more performatively stylized than active role. In her book, Bowie, biographer Wendy Lay interviews many figures in Bowie's mid-70s circles, including Tony Zanetta. Zanetta, the Alien's ex-assistant and main man officer, notes, when we were in bed together, he was more sensual and narcissistic. To him, it was about being adored. I don't think sex mattered to him. What I love is that he starts by saying, when we were in bed together. In 1972, Bowie and main man turned to New York, Fiddy, drag rocker, Wayne County, and recorded a live set at the Trucks. Intended for release on Main Man, the recording was shelved, and Bowie instead drew inspiration from Wayne's song, Are You a Boy or Are You a Girl?, channeling the lyrics into his hit single, Rebel Rebel. You've got your mother in a whirl, she's not sure if you're a boy or a girl. These very queer acts and moments gave me permission to come out. More like bursting at the seams, actually. Bowie represented not just a rock star with hot licks, he performed the role of non-normative parent, enabling the queer being inside of me, showing me a portal of possibility and handing me the keys to freedom. I admit the keys required more responsibility than I had at that time. Before Ziggy, I was drawn to the likes of Alice Cooper, who was masked in mascara, enough of a feminizing gesture to catch my attention. That and the notion to love it to death lured me to Varsity Stadium at the close of summer of '72. Ironically, it was the band's Schools Out tour, and it was also Labor Day, so we were all actually returning to school on the following Tuesday. Alice performed perfectly, plucking feathers from live chickens, then tossing them into the crowd, playing lasciviously with a python, and closing the show on the gallows. But the muddy sight of Varsity, sharing common ground with Woodstock, was a turnoff for me. Alice thrilled, but the scene was vulgar. Weeks later, I was in the music boutique of Big Steel, a new hyper-glam wing of Fairweather's department store on Yonge Street near King. The boutique was lined with mirrors on the walls, the ceiling, the floor. It was essential A Clockwork Orange come to life. The new LP, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, was posing in the center spotlight. Beside it, Hunky Dory. Was this the same artist? They look completely different. How could this be? I bought both immediately and began a loving mentorship under David Bowie. I brought a few pieces of ephemera from my Bowie collection, my Bowie archive today. The archive counts 475 items, over 300 of which are vinyl. And it's been featured on CBC television, and a curated selection appeared at the AGO when the David Bowie Is exhibition came to town in 2013. Like Munoz, I understand ephemera as evidence. Munoz notes, an object whose ontology, in its inability to count as a proper proof, is profoundly queer, and further links queer performative acts as an intellectual and discursive occasion for a queer world-making project, and proposes queerness as a possibility, a sense of self-knowing, a mode of sociality and relationality. With increasing frequency, queer and race scholarship, like feminist inquiry before it, are dismissed as merely passing intellectual fancies, modes of inquiry that are too much in the now and lacking historical grounding and conceptual staying power. Because the archives of queerness are makeshift and randomly organized due to the restraints historically shackled upon minoritarian cultural workers, the right is able to question the evidentiary authority of queer inquiry. All of this amounts to a general critique of queer scholarship's claim to rigor. But who owns rigor? Queerness is to share the privilege of being an outsider. It is the possibility to cut an exclusive path. It is seeing and being with undivided, unclouded clarity. Watch that man, my main man. David Bowie, where are you now? Lazarus and the newspapers say, look up here, I'm in heaven. But when the needle drops, he appears in my room, leading me by the ass, past an old-fashioned band of same-sexed married men, and beyond the trench to the next fantasy, and the next, and the next. Are you now? Are you now?